my dad played the bass in the song. You know that, so. Thank you guys. I always knew the name Sam the Sham and the Pharaohs because my dad always talked about playing for Sam the Sham and the Pharaohs. So it was one of the things I was proud of. My father, you know, he loved rock and roll and he loved that era. But I was like, Dad, why'd you get out of it? And he goes, man. He goes, when it started getting a little too hardcore, I just couldn't handle it. Those Beatles came in, just ruined it for all of us, you know? He loved some old country western, you know, he was a John Wayne fanatic. I told some people, I said, you know, God must have sent John Wayne in that room because he was out. I mean, it was about, when we said goodbye, it was about 5 minutes and he took one breath and he was gone. It was the most peaceful, loving moment of my life, being able to hold my father. Say bye to him one last time. What I want to talk about with my dad, a lot of you never knew who my father really was. And it saddens me because he was such a phenomenal man. And the man that I remember was a 6'4", you know, almost 200-pound, dominant, blue-eyed man that just dominated conference rooms and stage. And most of the people here never knew that because you saw him with an illness. And my father was truly my hero. And what I want to talk about is living a life of example that has now led to a legacy. And I truly believe that my father was allowed to let go of his life because he realized that he left a legacy behind and everything would be okay. My father was the definition of a true friend, a man of principle, a loving husband that was, you know, do anything for his wife. And I mean anything for his wife, right? My father was an amazing salesman, and the first thing I think he ever sold me on was that my wife, or my mom, was the most beautiful woman in the world. And I heard it every single day. Matt, your mom is the most beautiful woman in the world. Man, you know your mom's the most beautiful woman in the world? She walked in the room, Matt, your mom's the most beautiful woman in the world. I would literally go to preschool going, hey guys, you know what? My mom's the most beautiful woman in the world. How do you like that? Right? I mean, I truly believe my mom was the most beautiful woman in the world because he lived the example of letting me know, and not just the words, but through his eyes and how he acted toward my mom, and always just being so in love with her, and always wanting to serenade her, and just truly being an example of what a husband should look like towards a wife. My father was not a person that talked the talk, he walked the walk. He was a true example of what a man should be. And you know, he was a patient, loving, kind, and for you that know, he was very funny. Anybody ever hear my father crack some jokes? You know, almost everyone. And it was never a joke like, hey, I got a joke for you. There was a priest and a rabbi, right? He never did one of those jokes. He was always just like so witty, and he would always come off the top of his tongue of just something that would make people bust out laughing, whether it was a waitress or a complete stranger or a friend, and just some of the funniest ones. And Mom goes, oh my gosh, you're going to share this, but I'm going to because it is hilarious. He was at the nursing home, and he overheard, he was walking, he was in his wheelchair, going into somewhere, and he overheard some of the nurses talking about a cycle. So he did a U-turn, he comes back, and goes, excuse me, I overheard you. He goes, were you guys talking about a motorcycle? And they go, no, Charles, I'm so embarrassed, I can't believe you heard that. We were talking about our menstrual cycle. Without a beat, my dad goes, oh, well, that would be pretty hard to ride. So. I remember, just without a beat, I remember one time, Mom brought up Matt Ray's. I remember one time, Matt had this CJ7 Jeep, and I really wanted one, and we were shopping all over, and there was this little used car lot that had this really old, just piece of junk Jeep. But hey, we found it, you know, and it was orange, and it was brown, it had a big gold, or it was an eagle on the hood, right? And so I was like, Dad, I really want to test drive this with Matt, and Matt and I are in the front seat, and it's cold, right? It's like January maybe, it's freezing. And so we're test driving this thing, and it is a piece, right? I mean, the top is just flapping everywhere. I mean, the top would not seal whatsoever. You know, Matt and I are 16, we didn't care, but Dad's back there just freezing, you know, dripping on his nose, and he's just like, you know, and so I pull over, I'm like, what do you think, Dad? And he's like, well, you're gonna have a lot of fresh air, you know? Even when it was negative, he'd make something funny of it, or, you know, one of my memories, and to this day when I'm getting onto my son and he won't look at me, I think about this because I try to tell my son, look me in the eyes, I'm talking to you. My dad, one time, it's just a memory I have, and he was really lecturing me on something. Really, he's like, Matt, I need you to look me in the eyes. He's right in my face, you know, and really, and I wouldn't look at him, you know. He's like, Matt, I need you to look me in the eyes, son. Like, why will you not look at me? And I was like, I don't want to tell you, Dad. And he goes, well, is there something wrong? I go, well, your breath stinks. And he like snot rocketed out. He was laughing so hard. Like, he couldn't even contain his laughter, and the lecture was over. So every time my son won't look at me, I'm like, make sure that. My father was a definition of success. Like I said, most of you here never knew who he was. But when I was a child, my mom told you that I was homeschooled for several years, and I would go on the road with him, and my father loved to take me into boardrooms with him, and I would go in and watch him in, you know, Tracker bass boats or Ranger, and I'd watch him dominate a boardroom and make a multi-million-dollar sale, and I used to be in so much awe of my father and this dominance he had in a room. He was in the boating industry for 25 years, and it's one of my passions. I have so much for boats, and I love that industry, and the Tulsa Boat Show actually starts today, and my father was he was the director of the Tulsa Boat Show for several years. And so tomorrow I will honor him with funnel cakes, and I will crawl through every single boat in the Tulsa Boat Show. I'm very excited about that. But he loved to make money. And my dad was one of those people that it didn't matter what he could make money at, he would make money at it. And from the time I was a child, he loved Mercedes-Benz. It was his absolute favorite car. And he always had this knack of finding a car that was run down and finding this guy in Pine Bluff that would just make the car shine, and he would turn around and sell it. And I have memories of literally sitting in our driveway. We'd have 5 or 6 Mercedes-Benz, and you know, today would probably be investigated, right? I mean, people are like, there's some drug dealing going on there. But back then, my father loved buying and selling cars. You know, some funny stories. My dad always had access to stuff, right? I got access to this, I got access to that. And one time he had access to 10,000 egg rolls. Why in the world he had 10,000 egg rolls? But he sold it to every Egg Roll Express in Tulsa. You know, and it was just crazy. The owners of Taco Mile, are they in here by chance? I remember one time my dad had these bullhorns you like hang up on the wall, and he literally traded it to, you know, Taco Mile for hundreds of dollars. I ate free tacos like all through high school. It was unbelievable. One time he found these pontoon boats that were unassembled. And, you know, he bought all the parts to the pontoon boats, and next thing you know, he's putting together pontoon boats and so on. You know, my father was always into something. But that's what I loved about him. He was a driver, and he loved to make money. And something else I thought of, Mom, the other day, I don't know if you remember this or not, but fishing rod holders. You know, they're going to bass boat that hold fishing rods. And for whatever reason, my dad sold, I don't know, thousands of these things. And he comes home, he's like, good news, I sold thousands of these fishing rod holders to this company. Bad news is, we have to make them. So we would be in our garage, and he gave me 10 cents for every strap I would cut. I cut 1,000 straps the first day. I'm like, give me my $100 right now, Bob. So he's like, man, maybe I'm paying you too much. My father left a legacy with me. And, you know, one thing I love, and I thought about a lot about what I was going to talk about. My father never told me what he was going to do. He never sat down and gave me these intellectual speeches on life and love and happiness. He lived it. And I saw that through my eyes, you know, as a child. He never sat down and said, Matt, you need to start a home-based business because I have a home-based business. But I saw that my entire life growing up as a child. And today I have a home-based business. And it really hit my heart whenever when I was a child, I'd be in his office and I'd be laying under his legs. And I would be playing with my toys. And I used to love to hear his voice. Or he'd be sitting at his desk and I'd be under his desk. And I would be reading boating magazines or whatever. And about when Brock, my first son, was, or my firstborn son, he was 2 years old, I was working at my desk. And I heard something and I looked down and he was playing with his Thomas the Train under my legs. And I realized that my father passed on a legacy to me by living an example of what a husband should look like, what a father should look like, and what a businessman and a provider should look like. And, you know, my mom told that statement to me not too long ago, and it made me think about it. And she came to me and she said, Matt, you've accomplished in business what your father always wanted to. And I thought about that statement, Mom, you know, because as a son, it makes me proud. But the only reason I've accomplished what I've accomplished, Mom, is because my father instilled in me a legacy that I'm now living out. And because of that, my father will always be more successful than I'll ever be. Dad, I love you. I respect you. I'm not saying goodbye because I'll see you again. You will always be my boss. I love you.